When I was young, if you wanted to make a short film, you get a bunch of your friends together, throw some beer at them, and they'd help you out. When you get older, people have families, they have jobs, and they can buy their own beer. So filming something on a whim, something that's experimental, that becomes a lot harder. Using generative AI tools kind of changes that equation. I've worked on documentary projects, feature films, corporate films, commercials, and despite all that, despite being a child of MTV, I have never worked on a music video. And that's kind of what drew me to Project Odyssey Season 2. If it wasn't for the opportunity that these AI tools provide, this is a concept that would have always remained in the idea stage. It just would have lived on the shelf. The video is basically a musical number based on the indie children's book, Dude, Where's My Beard? About a young hipster who somehow manages to lose his precious facial hair. And I really wanted to lean into that classic MTV era structure. Like in the 1980s, half the videos on TV, they followed this template. You had parallel action scenes of the band performing while they're like on stage or on a boat or on the moon or on a moonboat, whatever. And then that was cross-cut with some elaborate cinematic narrative. And that's what we have here, half performance, half visual narrative. The process of developing characters in this workflow, it's kind of like casting. What will the characters look like? How will they move? Can they be expressive? I used Midjourney to iterate on the featured characters until I had a cast that really worked. Generating sets is kind of like digital location scouting. FreePick was especially useful for this part. I could generate backgrounds, go in and retouch them as needed, then do any finishing work in Photoshop and get the plates ready for the edit. For performance, I relied heavily on Kling. Kling did the best job of interpreting a prompt with an image reference and adding really dramatic movement and really cool hair dynamics, which is obviously pretty important for a song about beards. Then my absolute new best friend was Viggle. Not only does the platform have like hundreds of existing templates with exotic dance moves, but when I needed something super specific, I could provide the movement myself. And then when I needed a very specific facial performance, like close-ups that needed to be really expressive, I used Runway's Act 1 feature. And again, I could use my performance and move it into the digital space. Some people ask, why didn't you just learn 3D animation? Well, the fact is, I tried. I mean, all the way back to Video Toaster and Lightwave, up to Unreal and Blender, I just never had much success. But early in my career, before I started editing professionally, I worked in physical effects like monster makeup and animatronics, the kind of special effects that dominated the film industry before CGI. I was a puppeteer, I did suit work, stop motion. So those elements of movement and physical performance, those things connected with me, they made sense to me. And the ability to transfer that understanding to content creation is one of the most appealing aspects of this generative AI moment we're living through. And you can't really build out a fantasy world without a convincing soundscape. So that's where 11 Labs came in, for generating custom effects specific to the action, however bizarre and disturbing. The result is something very different from anything I've ever done or would have tried to do, because it's much easier to iterate as an individual using generative AI tools. As a video editor, I'm used to being given assets and being told, these are your building blocks. This is what you have to work with, so make it work. And I love that process. I mean, that's what video editing is to me. But telling visual stories using generative AI, to me, it's more like writing, because it's easier to erase something that isn't working and pivot in a new direction. And where we are right now is really just the beginning.